that in the next workshop that I'm going to be doing in a couple of weeks, where I'm really going to focus on what we really believe in with the Vancouver Whitecaps, the Whitecaps way, if you will, with our philosophy and methodology working with young players. And we hope, we hope that you agree with that, that a big part of that is inspiring youth and instilling the love of the game. Okay, so, but today the focus is going to be especially on growing club culture. I found this quote a few weeks ago by sports psychologist Jim Taylor, and he describes club culture as the expression of a club's values, attitudes, and beliefs about sports and competition. It determines whether, for example, the club's focus is on fun, mastery, or winning, or whether it promotes individual accomplishment or team success. The culture is grounded in an identified sense of mission and shared goals. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. It's grounded in an identified sense of a mission and shared goals. And we are going to explore that area, and we're going to explore that a little bit together. Simon Sinek wrote a book. It's called Start with Why. And I hear that more and more, and I was quite taken by that book when I read that. You know, the most important question you have to ask with whatever you do is why. Why are you doing it? Okay, you can focus on the what, and what is more the products and the services that you provide. So a club, you know, what does a club do? Well, they have academy programs, they have teams that play in a league, they may do coach education, they may have partnerships with other youth clubs or sports clubs. So that is mostly focused on the products and the services that a club provides. Now, when you look at the how, that describes more, you know, the quality of those products, and every club has its own way of how they are presenting themselves, how they organize their programs, how they conduct themselves in those programs. So that is more the how. But what Simon Sinek is talking about, like the most important question is the why. You first have to know your main purpose. What is your core? Why are we doing this? What is the reason that we exist as a soccer club? So that's going to be the question that we're going to be asking ourselves today, and that we're going to explore in smaller groups in a little bit. So start with why. People buy or don't buy why you are doing what you're doing. And there's another very, very important reason why you need to know why you're doing things, what your mission statement is, what your purpose is, because otherwise it would be absolutely impossible to actually evaluate your programs, because you don't really know what you're evaluating it against. Okay, so again, knowing what your mission statement is really, really important for ongoing reflection and evaluation of the programs that you run, and the reason why you exist as a club. So that brings me to the Vancouver Whitecaps. When I first started in 2006, I still remember Greg Choufour had started with the Whitecaps, I believe, in 2005. It was still a USL club back then, but Greg Choufour had some very, very clear whys, and one of the main whys for him, one of his main purposes, was to be a community asset. Okay, and that's been clear right from the beginning. When I first entered the club and started working for the club, that being a community asset is a big part of what we do. Okay, and this has evolved. It doesn't mean that your why, that your mission statement, that your purpose is always uh, the same. It can evolve. It can take up a little bit of another meaning. And for the Whitecaps, it has sort of evolved into inspiring communities. So that is one thing that every single person that works for the Vancouver Whitecaps is really clear on. We are, as a club, we are supposed to be a community asset. We want to inspire communities, and that is in all aspects. Okay, that's in aspects of coaching. That's in aspects of coach education. That's in aspects of community relations, that is partnering with worthwhile causes in the community. And what it has done during this COVID time where we've been isolated, it's really brought us together again as an organization. And these are some of the things that came out of that. So the Whitecaps partnered with Carson Ting, a well-known artist in Vancouver, and Carson Ting consequently also got some of his artist friends involved with this whole project, and they were on board right away. And you know, our marketing department pitched this to them. You know, we want to do something for the food bank. We want to raise some funds, and this is our idea. And so they started talking, and from that, Carson Ting and some of his friends have created these posters, and we are now selling these posters, and all the proceeds are going to the Vancouver Food Bank. And so far, this project has already raised over $100,000. So certainly inspiring communities. Another project that we've been doing is, you know, the Caps Clubhouse every morning, led by Carl Valentine, who most of you know, and many of our first team players. So again, this is a joint effort. And what they do is they read stories to small kids that come on the Zoom call. They do arts and crafts projects, and it's just another way to inspire communities, young people in our community that are becoming part of our family. Another project we've done is these daily life skills clinics every afternoon at 2 o'clock, and Pedro was on today, and Pedro has been one of the coaches that has been conducting these life skills clinics. And we have first team players involved, and we have national team women players involved who are co-coaching with some of the coaches that are conducting these sessions. And we're getting up to 400 or 500 people on these daily life skills clinics. Today, we had a team from New Zealand joining us. Pedro has some connections in New Zealand, and he had kids from the club that he worked there. He had them on the skills clinic. That was absolutely fabulous. Again, inspiring communities, not just locally, but all over the world. So that's been an absolutely tremendous project. And then last but not least, you know, when the Whitecaps found out that the Vancouver Aquarium was in big trouble, our marketing department got together with the Vancouver Aquarium, and they started brainstorming on some ideas to raise funds for the Vancouver Aquarium. And what came out of that was between the aquarium and our arts department, they came up with some design to make these face masks, obviously very appropriate for this particular time, to make these face masks and sell them. And there's been over 100,000 sold, and we've raised over $1 million already for the Vancouver Aquarium, which is much needed because the Vancouver Aquarium needs over $1 million a month to survive basically this time when they can't have any visitors. So that's just an example of, the why of the Vancouver Whitecaps that I got to know right from the beginning when I started with the club, and that has evolved in inspiring communities. So that gives you a little bit of an idea how those are together, how those are fitting together. So I'm going to go a little bit to another side. I'm going to give you a little bit of a cheesy example, but just to make it clear how your core principles, how your norms and values, how your mission statement, your purpose tie in with the things that you're doing within your club. So this is an example of a club that wants to instill discipline in kids. Okay, so that is their main mission. That's their purpose. So let's look at what kind of effect that has on their training environment. Okay, so they want to instill discipline in kids. So the training is very coach driven. It's no nonsense, and the kids stay in line. In terms of the games, the way the coaches approach the games in this club, players stick to their task, and there's no room for player input. Okay, so it's all about discipline of the players. Then when you look at communication, in the communication, it's very one-directional. The coach talks, the players listen. Players gets disciplined in conflict situations. And in terms of behavior, that's also very clear. Respect for adults is emphasized. Players listen and follow code or leave. Okay, now, don't get me wrong, and we'll get to that on the next slide. There's absolutely nothing wrong with respect for adults, but I'm going to touch on that there's maybe a better way to going about this. Okay, so a club operating from this why will most likely lose its young audience very quickly. Times have changed. Okay, so again, don't get me wrong. I also think discipline is important. But when I always talk to coaches, I think there's a much better way to teaching discipline and modeling discipline. I always say that if you want players to work hard yourself. If you want players to be on time, be on time. If you want players to challenge themselves, challenge yourself. If you want players to be respectful, be respectful. If you want players to be passionate about the game, be passionate about the game. And if you want players to enjoy it, then make sure you make it enjoyable. Okay, so you get the drift. Okay, so even though that club, that example of that club was very clear what they were after discipline, but there's different ways to go about it. So when you are creating a mission statement, if you're creating your why, your purpose, your next step is then going to be like, okay, how are we going to do this? And with what kind of programs and with what kind of behavior? Okay, so that gets us to the next step. And I'm going to take a little step back because we're going to break out in what we call breakout rooms. And in that breakout room, you're basically having a private conversation. Private until I pop in, and I can pop in and out and join your conversation or ask a question or just listen to how the conversation is going. So within that group, I want you to pretend that you are starting a club together. And I understand that you are probably not all from the same club, but that's okay. It's just to do this exercise, to sort of have an idea, okay, if we start a club, we got to be clear what our why is, what our mission statement is, what our purpose is. Okay, and then the next step, so you're going to figure out with each other, and you don't have to completely agree. You're going to figure out what your mission statement is going to be with your new club. And then when we pop out of our breakout rooms, and you can have one of your people quickly pop out back to the main group, and then write in the chat what you came up with as a group in terms of your mission statement. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to divide you in groups. I'll probably just make 2 groups. So we'll have probably about 6 or 7 people in one group. And your task is to then discuss, with the people in your group, how you're going to start your club and what your mission statement is going to be. When you are in your breakout room, you have to accept it, and then you can start conversing together. Are we all clear on that? If we're all clear on that, just give me one of those. You find those in your reactions? Yeah, okay. Looks like we have enough people that are clear on it. So I'm going to divide you now in your breakout rooms, and I will see you on the other side, or I will see you in your breakout room when I come in and listen in and see how things are going.
Who's going to tell us who's in what breakout?
Say it again, you?
Who's going to tell us? Is Raheem going to tell us who's on the teams?
No, it's going to, Zoom will generate that automatically, and I'm doing that right now.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so I will see you guys on the other side.
Okay.
Adele, are you still with us? Oh, she's in. That the main stakeholders, and that is really everybody, can agree on something like that, and then work from that same mission statement. Okay, so let's move on, Paul. So whatever mission statement you have, whatever purpose you have as a club, will affect all the things that you're doing in your club. It will affect the programs that you offer. Okay, as you were saying, like we want to be inclusive. It's not just for the high-level players; it's for all the players. So obviously, when you have that as a mission statement, then your programs have to reflect that. Like you have to have a different kind of programs to cater to different level of players. Behavior of the coaches, the players, and the parents comes straight out of that, because there are certain things that we expect from our coaches, from our players, from our parents. If we want to develop good people, obviously, if we want to develop good people, we have to be good people as coaches and as parents in order to model that, and we have to expect that from the kids that are playing for our club. And then, of course, it has a direct impact on the training and the game emphasis. Okay, that's more the philosophy methodology side, which I will go much deeper into in a couple of weeks. It will affect your communication, your decision making, your conflict resolution, and basically everything, and including your organizational culture. And I want to take a little bit of a side road to go into organizational culture, because the organizational culture is important, that it matches what your mission statement is. Okay, because it's directly tied in with your club purpose. Okay, so I read an article by Quinn and Cameron from the University of Michigan, a very good article on organizational cultures, and they divided them in 4 different organizational culture. One is clan. It's more of a family-like organization with a focus on mentoring, nurturing, doing things together. Yeah, so it almost like it acts like a family. Another one is what they called adhocracy, and adhocracy is more a culture where a club or an organization wants to jump on new ideas right away, and they want to be the first ones to execute those. So it's a culture that takes risks, and they don't mind failing, but they always want to be the first ones to try new things. Whereas a market-oriented culture are more results oriented. It's a little bit more thought out. It takes a little bit longer, but it's very much has a focus on competition, achievement, and getting the job done. And then, of course, we're all very familiar with a hierarchical culture, and a hierarchical culture, yeah, has more layers, and sometimes things move a little bit slower because it may come from the bottom up, but then it has to go to the top and back to the bottom. So sometimes it has to work through a number of layers. So what I found interesting by that article is how certain organizations had a certain purpose, but their organizational culture didn't really match that. So it's important to be aware of what that looks like. Now, if you look at clan and adhocracy, obviously in those kind of cultures, there's a little bit more flexibility, adaptability, freedom to act. Whereas in the market and hierarchical cultures, it's a little bit more stable and a little bit more controlled, and things take a little bit longer. Change is a little bit slower, whereas with the adhocracy, change can be really, really quick, and so you would call that like a breakthrough change. They may have to go back to the table, but in an adhocracy, they don't really mind that. Now, if you look at these colored dots, if you look at them as clubs, so the green club would then really, focus on, being first and being novel and trying new things. The red club would really, I made it red because it's all from the heart. It's a family kind of environment. We always work together. We nurture each other. We are sort of always doing things together. A market culture is more, it's more competitive. It's probably a little bit of a colder kind of climate, but can be still very effective. And then a hierarchical club, here the brown dot, um, obviously that has many, many layers, where there may be an idea sprouting from the bottom up that then has to work itself through the different layers and then come back to get executed. Now, the reality is that most clubs probably have more of a hybrid kind of organizational culture, and that looks more like this. Like if you look at the club that is red with the big blue ring around it, the fat blue ring. Okay, it may still be very family oriented and doing things together, but they also have a real, they also want to be very competitive. So they sort of sit on that line between clan and market. So they sort of marry those two kind of cultures together. Okay, so that's sort of how you have to look at it. And I'm not saying that, when you sit down with your club, you have to figure out, okay, we're going to be like this. Sometimes these kind of things just kind of grow organically. Sometimes you have to adapt them. You have to talk about, well, you know what, the way we are organized, it doesn't really fit with what we're all about. So maybe we can make some changes at it. But I just wanted to touch on that. So now I want to get into the second part, and I think, you know, it's very encouraging for me to see when I look at your mission statements. It very much ties in with the mission statement that I'm going to present to you right now, and that's inspiring youth and instilling the love for the game, basically. Okay, so it's something that I'm going to go dig much deeper into the next workshop when I really start talking about how we do things with young players with the Whitecaps and what that actually looks like in actuality in the practical field. I'm going to give you lots of examples as well, but I want to start that conversation today. Okay, so what does that mean? If your mission statement is to instill the love of the game and inspiring youth, what does that mean? So you already started some of that conversation. We're going to go back into our breakout rooms, and I want you to get a little bit more specific. Paul, if you show us the next slide. So when you're back in your breakout rooms, I want you to look at this mission statement, so inspiring youth and instilling love for the game, and that very much ties in with the things you already talked about. But now I want you to get more specific. So what does that mean for the kind of programs that we offer, the behavior of our coaches, of our players, of the parents, the training and the game emphasis, our philosophy, the communication, decision making, conflict resolution, and organizational culture. Okay, and anything else that you can come up with. So I want you to go back to your breakout rooms, discuss that, and then when you come out, I want you to populate the chat again, but with just some bullets that, you know, the programs that we offer in that kind of, with that kind of mission statement is blah, 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 because of this and this and this, and the behavior, etc. Okay? So I'm going to let you go again into your discussion groups, and we will see you on the other side. The rooms are now better. It gives for an interesting perspective, right? Because often when we are in our, you know, in our soccer world, you know, we are often with the same people a lot, and I've noticed that within our Whitecaps organization as well. Like suddenly, you know, we are crossing departments all over the place, and we learn more and more from each other, and you know, from our personalities, how people work, and what they bring to the table, and I've learned a ton over the last couple of months. It's absolutely amazing. So. Are we getting some stuff in the chat there, Paul?
No, not yet. Maybe some people are putting the whole thing in, but feel free just to have a few different chats if it's easier, so I can kind of get some of them down.
Oh, there's one in there.
It'll probably take a little bit of time to write everything in. Bart, you're going to have to compile all of the ideas and put it together so that even from the workshops in Manitoba and ours, we can learn from them and they can look at some of the stuff that we come up with as well, because that would be pretty neat to see.
That's the idea, Raheem. That's why I haven't sent anything yet. So
okay.
That's why I wanted to, you know, what came out of the conversations, to put it straight into the presentation. And then once we've sort of compiled it together, you know, I'll create a PDF and I'll send it to you, and I'll send it to Manitoba as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what they come up with.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we'll give Paul a couple more minutes to get some things on the whiteboard. So Paul, you don't have to put them all in. You can always save them, and then we can populate it later as well.
Yeah, no problem. I'll share what I have now.
Okay. Okay, so here are some things that came out of the conversation. If we want to inspire youth and instill love for the game, programs, we have to run programs at all level. Cradle to grave, I guess. It has to be player-centered, and I will get more into that in the next in our next webinar. What does that actually mean, player-centered? We have to be adaptable. We have to be positive. Okay, I will very much get into positive pedagogy in the next webinar as well. We have to educate parents. I think that's a really, really good point. So that we can create that, that real strong togetherness of, coaches, club, players, all working together from the same kind of parameters and the same kind of purpose. Focus on problem solving. I would imagine that may be problem solving in the sessions or the games. Who wrote that down? Who can give us a little bit of a clarification on that? Focus on problem solving.
Sure. So it may be a little bit different only because we looked at it first not as soccer but as lifelong skills. So problem solving is something that you need for the rest of your life, and therefore if we want to teach problem solving, we can do that through soccer.
Right.
So
Okay.
the problems that we create for people, and then if it's like problem solving with others, so it could be individual problem solving, it could be small group problem solving, so putting kids into groups of 2s or 3s or whatever and giving them a task which may be more player-led versus coach-led because they're having to try and identify the problem. So for some of the behavioral stuff, it was really more about that being the primary focus, like in the if we look at 4 corners, social first and then everything else second.
Yeah, I still remember, Raheem, when we when you were in Vancouver and we did the coach on-field session, and you had a really good exercise that we did, and there was a lot of problem solving involved, and the problems changed all the time as well. Like you had less players working together because there were more defenders. So that was probably a really good example, right?
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah.
And I'm gonna give more of those practical examples in our next workshop as well.
Cool.
Yeah. Organizational code of conduct for everyone, clarity of structure, open communication for all, behaviors, respectful, supportive, positive, never afraid. Okay, so yeah, those are all very important points. Inclusive, respectful behavior in all directions. Okay, so yeah, we hit on a lot. I did mention, or I did hear fun. I don't see fun in here, but that's okay.
Can only type so fast. These little fingers can. That was part of what we said, to be kind.
Right.
Be supportive.
And enjoy.
Never afraid to fail. Yeah, have fun.
Right. Okay. Okay. All right. So, Paul, let's go back to we have a few more slides, and then I want to leave it for today. A positive and safe environment. Okay, some closing remarks. Creating a safe, positive environment for players. Fun is highlighted there. It's all too easy to forget that soccer is meant to be fun, and at every level, like the highest at the highest possible level, every single player started playing the game because they loved the game. They had fun with the game. They were enjoying it. And hopefully most of those pros still enjoy it. Yeah. Also what you mentioned, Lisa, players can't be afraid of repercussions for making a mistake. Yeah. Or dread coming to training because their coach acts like a military drill instructor. You're unlikely to get the most out of them on the pitch. Instead, players, particularly at younger age levels, should feel free to express themselves and should look forward to match day. And also, the collective responsibility, not a blaming behavior like, it was your mistake that did us in today, or like it's all about working together. And Raheem, that comes back to the social aspect as well, right? Which is a big part of what we do. Okay. So before we finish, I wanna look how this all ties in with the CSA as well, and with the Canada Soccer Club licensing program. So I just have a couple slides that highlight the Canadian Soccer Association's view and approach, and it very much ties in with what we've been talking about. Okay, the primary goals set clearly defined standards. So we did that. We worked on mission statements and what kind of consequences that had for our behavior and for our programs, et cetera, et cetera. They want to recognize excellence in soccer community. And I think this is the big one, the one that's underlined. Raise the level of all soccer organizations throughout Canada. Okay, and it doesn't really matter if you're recreational, if you're a community center, if you're a high performance club, it doesn't really matter, a professional club. The goal for the Canadian Soccer Association and their licensing program is to raise the level of all soccer organizations throughout Canada. So everybody has these conversations within their club and work on their purpose. And this also comes from the CSA, principle-based approach, prioritize fun. Lewis mentioned that, very, very important. And I will get into a little bit more detail in the next workshop. What does that actually mean, fun? Okay, does that be, okay, I won't get into it right now. Emphasize physical, mental, and emotional safety, a very important part, of course. And emotional safety is very much about, if you want kids to learn from their mistakes, you can't trash them every single time when they make a mistake. So you have to create that environment that they feel safe to make mistakes and try things. Provide developmentally appropriate, high quality programs. Holistic approach, okay, that was brought up by all the people in both groups. Focus on participant-centered decision-making. Okay, so that was mentioned. Foster accessible, inclusive, and welcome environments. Okay, and then of course also act as a good corporate and community citizen. So it all ties in, not just with our pro club or with community clubs. It also ties in with what the Canadian Soccer Association is after. Okay, so that's why I wanted to tie that in. So this is my final slide. So summarizing, so we looked at the why. From the why, when we ask that question, we come to our purpose, to our mission statement. And out of that, that sort of affects what kind of programs we run, how we behave, what kind of organizational culture suits us best. Who are the gatekeepers of that mission statement? Is that the whole club? Or in a hierarchical system, is that more the board, or is that a TD? In a family clan kind of organization, it's probably everybody that holds each other accountable. Then, of course, out of that also comes like how and who do we hire, and what's our philosophy in training and games, and that's a big one that I'm going to go into in the next session. And then those circular arrows on the outside, that basically says we always have to keep reflecting. Yeah, so we have to start with the why, but then we also, we have to have those moments of reflection, of evaluation, and look at, the things that we're doing. Do they still fit what we set out to do? Does it still fit our mission statement? Does it still fit our purpose? So it's an ongoing evaluation, and that needs to happen all the time. And the stronger you get as a club, and the more of the people believe in what you do together, the stronger that kind of club culture, that purpose becomes part of our own. But we still have to keep looking at it if we still are true to our mission statement. So that is sort of the message that I wanted to get across in this first webinar. So I'd love to get some questions around this or comments from any one of you. So Paul, if you can unmute everybody and see, let's get to see everybody. And please, any comments or questions?
Maybe I'll start us off, Bart. Just from my perspective, this was actually a lot of fun. The breakout rooms were a lot of fun, and it was nice to think about things in a slightly different way than your sort of traditional starting with something that already exists and thinking outside the box. So I know I had a lot of fun. And I just want to say on behalf of Saskatchewan Soccer to thank both you and Paul, just in case I don't have the chance at the end.
That's awesome. Thanks, Reem. Yeah, and that's what I like too about these, these random breakout rooms. Suddenly you're with a group of people that you may not be having these conversations with. So it's it opens interesting avenues. Anybody else? Comment, questions?
I think one of the lines you used, Bart, was Canadian soccer is trying to advance its levels of the knowledge of the game, no matter whether if you're a little club or you're a Vancouver Whitecaps club, And I think these type of seminars, webinars we setting up, totally different to what it was before this virus problem we're under right now. And I think it's increasing everybody's knowledge in order to go back to their clubs and take something back to increase the quality and the level that we are going to go back to and operate. I think it's good for us all when we go back. So thank you, Bart, for some really good information. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And that's what I'm hoping, that that these conversations swell up and they continue. When you're in your regular environment with your club, with the people that you normally work with, keep having those conversations. So thanks for that, for sure.
Yeah.
Monica, did you want to say something? I thought you had a hand up. No. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I really appreciate you putting this time in and continue working on getting better. We always want to get better. We want to improve our daily best practice, and we can do that through reading or collaborating or watching others in action. So I really appreciate you spending the time and working on yourself and being part of this webinar. So thank you very much, and thanks for hosting us, Raheem, and Paul. Thanks for your work at the controls. And Pedro, thank you for helping set this up.
Not a
Thanks,
problem.
guys.
See everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bart.
Thank you,
Good
Bart.
Good night.
Thank you.
For the rest of your evening, everybody.
Thanks,
Good night.
guys. Thanks,
Bye.
Bye.
You say, Pedro.
See you.
See you later.
See you guys. Take care.
Bye, Lisa. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.